Hello and welcome to another fantastic episode of the Fantastic Mr. Podcast. I am your host, Justin Strange, here with my lovely co-host, Jake Kramers, and unfortunately, Zach Briggs couldn't be with us today. This is going to be a few weeks beforehand, but with the shootings in Texas, he's a reporter, and he's been having to cover that, so he couldn't be with us tonight, unfortunately.
It's just a really unfortunate thing, but he's doing good work. Like,
right.
Honestly, what he's doing right now is way more important than what we're doing right now.
And by right now, he means a few weeks ago. Because unfortunately, we have episodes stocked up, so this episode won't air for another. I don't remember how many episodes we got until we actually catch up. I don't think we're very far away from actually catching up.
Probably we're just a few weeks behind. Probably.
I don't want to look, but
the point is he's doing important work, actually contributing to society.
And we're sitting here talking about movies. Anyway, let's talk. So today's episode is going to be not necessarily about movies, but I mean, I guess some movies could fall into this category.
There, for sure.
But we're going to mostly be talking about mockumentary TV shows. And for those who don't know what a mockumentary TV show is, it is a fictional piece of work that looks like a documentary. So
yes, Merriam-Webster defines a mockumentary as a fictitious or satirical work, such as a film presented in the style of a documentary.
Beautiful. Almost exactly what I said.
And yeah, I know. I specifically had that in my notes.
That's
because when I told my wife that we were going to be talking about a mockumentary, she said, what? I said, a mockumentary. And she said, what? And I said, it's a
mockumentary,
a documentary, but it's a mock. It's a mock of a documentary. And she said, I never heard of that. And I said, well, it's a thing that exists. And she said, you should probably provide a definition for people who don't know that. And I said, all right, I will.
Well, luckily,
that's what I did.
Me and Mr. Merriam-Webster know what the definition is. And I guess you knew what it was before looking at the definition. I don't want to take away that much credit from you.
No, this is for the people's.
Got it.
Specifically for my wife, but
my wife,
she's the representation of our audience who may or may not be familiar with the subject, and so we are just providing a little taste of what's to come.
For sure. So, the mockumentary style, I don't want to say it started with The Office, but it definitely, I think, The Office revolutionized it and kind of made it mainstream. Does that make sense? Do you agree or do you not agree?
No, absolutely not. Per usual, we disagree.
So what is your take on it?
I mean, mockumentaries have been around, I'm not going to say forever, but they've been around a long time. You'll notice, actually, the Merriam-Webster, that definition. I won't notice that.
Oh, go ahead.
It's defined as such as a film, not a film. Mockumentaries have existed long before film. A very notable mockumentary is Orson Welles' 1938 radio drama, The War of the Worlds, which was
I guess that's true.
Yeah, it was produced with such artistry and professionalism that it actually created mass panic, and people actually thought we were being invaded by aliens. And I don't even think that's the first mockumentary, but I would say that's probably the first mockumentary that received note.
Mm-hmm. So did you find this information about War of the Worlds and it was considered a mockumentary?
Yeah, I did a report on Orson Welles back in my university days. It's really cool, to be honest. If you have
Orson Welles
about film, I know this is a film podcast, but if you have the opportunity to just get on YouTube, or I think it's in the Free Music Archive, if you have the opportunity to listen to Orson Welles' 1938 radio drama.
Well, it's on Spotify as well.
Oh, is it? Perfect.
Yeah, because I taught Orson Welles in film, and that was the one thing we talked about was War of the Worlds and how it was so good that people actually thought aliens were attacking in New Jersey. I think it was New Jersey. And so I was like, okay, so I want y'all to listen to some of it. So we didn't listen to all of it, of course, but we listened to some of it on Spotify.
So if you follow the definition, it's a fictitious. It's a fictitious work.
Fictitious.
Or a satirical work. Fictitious.
Mm-hmm.
Here you go with language.
Mm-hmm.
I just play with camera, guys.
I have a minor in English, so
that explains a lot, my dude.
So I can correct you, your English minorly.
That explains so much of our friendship.
Yeah, I can correct your English minorly. I don't think minorly is a word, but
marginally.
Well, I was trying to use the word minor.
I
minored in it.
But it's a fictitious work or a satirical work presented in the style of a documentary, which if you go back and you listen to his works, that fits that definition to a T.
Well, let me ask you this, though. Since War of the Worlds and The Office, what other notable examples can you provide?
Justin, I'm so glad you asked that. Because if there is one thing I did prepare for this episode, it is a little list of some notable documentaries.
Give it to me. Give it to me.
Of course, we have Orson Welles.
Right.
Another notable mockumentary is A Hard Day's Night, which follows a fictitious 36 hours with the Beatles playing themselves. Another notable mockumentary was the BBC's Spaghetti Harvest of Ticino. That's an Italian awesome word. I probably butchered it.
No, I can't correct you on that one either.
Yeah, but that was a mockumentary segment that they actually aired on the BBC and fooled a whole bunch of people, which was essentially, it was like a news package, and it claimed that spaghetti grew on trees, and it followed this little family, I think in Switzerland, as they harvested the spaghetti plants. And what made that one work is they actually did the voiceover by the leading TV news commentator at the time, Richard Dimbleby, which was he was a leading anchor on the BBC. So they got him to voice it. They did this little 3-minute package, and people thought it was real.
I love it.
It's really great. So there's been mockumentaries throughout history. I will say, when it comes to modern mockumentaries,
Come on, Jake.
Jesus Christ, we're going to edit this out. I'm going to cut all this up.
Just redo it. Just redo it.
When it comes to modern mockumentaries, I will say that television reigns supreme. There's a lot of great
I would agree.
Modern mockumentaries that have come on TV of late that are really, really spectacular and have really pushed the boundaries of the mockumentary genre.
Yeah, now that you mention it, there is another mockumentary film that I saw a few years ago, and it's because I was looking for nerdy stuff, comic book stuff, and whatnot. And this came out in 2004, a year before The Office premiered, actually. Oh wow! And it stars Mark Hamill, and it's called Comic Book the Movie, and it's about this guy who owns a comic book store, and he ends up going to Comic-Con, but it's not real because it's got Mark Hamill in it, but it's mockumentary style. And I totally until this episode, I completely forgot about that movie.
Until this second.
Yes. I was like, oh my God. So, I get that there were things in between War of the Worlds and The Office, but to me,
the pinnacle of mockumentaries.
It's The Office. I mean, The Office is my favorite show. So, it does the documentary stuff so well because it refers to the cameras. The cameras talk to the actors, not the actors, but the characters and stuff like that. Like, it does the documentary style so well. Whereas other shows that have done this format, such as Parks and Rec and Modern Family, and even What We Do in the Shadows, it's just, they have those talking heads and all that. But The Office is the one that truly the plot line is
committed. The Office committed to the genre
for sure.
Parks and Rec, What We Do in the Shadows, Modern Family, they do a good job. I would say that they're mockumentaries, but they're certainly dramatized, and they play up the fact that it's a mockumentary style. The audience is aware that this is purposely shot in this manner to tell the narrative, whereas The Office really just sells the fact that this is a documentary crew doing documentary work, and they just happen to have this crazy office of people.
Yeah. This office of crazy people, you mean? Sorry, I just had to say it. So yeah, and there's I don't know, I love that show. But yeah, I agree. Because they have, the documentary crew that comes in and they're making a documentary of the normal, office worker, essentially. It takes them 9 years to do it somehow. I don't know how, but they eventually make that documentary.
Dude, I want to know where they got the funding for that.
I mean, seriously, like they worked on that show for 9 years.
Can you just imagine this documentary crew going to their benefactor and being like, "Listen, man, I know it's been 8 years,
but we got one more year to go, and that's it.
It's too good to put down.
We have to keep it going.
It's gonna sell like hotcakes, man. I promise."
That's funny. Yeah. So The Office, of course. Oh man, I didn't look up when hold up. The Office. Hang on, just a second. We're gonna cut this out. Okay. So
and while you look that up, I think it would be remiss to.
You're going to say
out that you're going to say American Office is actually based off.
God dang it! That's exactly
it
what
is.
That's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. That's what I was looking up.
Taking too long. You're looking stuff up,
I was looking up when it released. I was trying to see when the UK version released. It released in 2001,
which I couldn't get into the UK version. I tried watching it.
I watched like part of the first season and I thought it was funny, but I didn't want to continue. Like I was like, this is really funny, but I'm not really interested in this. And like. It's funny because like everybody on The Office, the US version, are like, yeah, I watched the British version. I thought it was so funny. I watched it all the way through. And I'm like, I thought it was funny too, but I don't know. I just stopped at like episode 7 or 8.
Yeah. I think I got to episode 3, maybe. And it was too much for me.
Don't get me wrong. British comedy is gold. Sometimes.
Oh yeah. British comedy is great. I love the IT crowd.
I was just going to say the IT crowd is so hilarious, but I don't know.
This particular brand, I think it was the fact that it was dry humor.
Well, that's England for you.
It is, but like the IT crowd is dry humor and it's funny. It's hilarious. I think this was just, for me, the British Office was dry humor without, I don't know, heart, without, It was like they left the positivity out of it almost.
Okay.
If that makes any sense at all.
I guess. I mean,
like very cynical.
I just couldn't get into it very much. Like I really tried. And then because I loved the American Office so much, I was like, I need to give it a good shot. And they say try to get about 6 episodes in before you decide if you don't like something. And I'm like, okay, here I go. And I did. And I was like, I don't want to watch this anymore.
Number 7, check it off.
Yeah. And I just went back to the American Office. So what is your take on, let's talk about The Office for a second. So what is your take on the US Office? Have you seen it all? Okay.
Yeah, I've seen, that is actually one of the few television series that I've seen all the way through. Mm-hmm. Like Parks and Rec, I ended on the second to last season. House, I ended on the second to last season. I have attachment issues, I think. And so I don't want these shows to end and I don't watch it. But The Office was so good that I had to finish it. And I wanted to see where these lives were going at the end of the show.
Here's the cool thing about TV, Jake. You can watch it again and again and again and again.
But the emotional trauma that I take the first time,
I mean, yeah, I get it.
Is just
I've watched The Office for 11 about 10 almost 11 years straight, because I started watching.
Have you watched it through 11 times?
Oh, I've watched it through way more than 11 times.
Oh my God.
I can assure you. So whenever a certain reporter started at Channel 7, I don't want to say her name, but she is an Office fan as well. And that's the one thing her and I had in common. And, whenever we start, they send out those little information things with our picture on it and says like, we came from here and this is what we do. And then a funny fact about us or whatever. And hers was like, she claims to be an Office fanatic, having seen the show at least 4 times.
And I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I was like, 4 times. I was like, if she's a fanatic after seeing it only 4 times, I wonder how many times, I like what I am.
I remember you used to give her so much crap because you would quote The Office at her and she'd be like, what? And you're like, how can you call yourself a fan if you don't know what I'm talking about?
That's who we should have got on this freaking podcast.
And she would have been great.
Yeah.
Oh, well, too late.
Yeah, too late. So sad. We just need to have an episode directed at specifically The Office. I think she would be good for, or not. This is it. This is our Office episode.
What we should do is we just should flash mob old friends and just tell them that we're doing a podcast, not tell them what it's about, and then just throw them in the ring and see what they say.
Yeah, we could.
Like, what would you call that? Like we jump, like when you jump
blindside
someone.
them?
Yeah, blindside them with podcast. That might be a fun segment.
Yeah, that would be actually. We'll talk about it because that does sound like a cool idea. So anyway, I've been watching The Office. So in 2011 is when I started, and the only reason I know that is because I went to Henderson State University in Arkansas for a semester, and I went to a friend's house during that time, and they were watching The Office. It was super random. And I had tried to watch The Office before and I didn't like it, but they were watching The Office and I remember Kevin's stupid face and I thought it was funny. And so I was like, whenever the school year was over, I had been living in the dorm, so I didn't have a place to live. So I went to my mom's house and stayed for a while. And I was like, you know what? I'll try The Office. It was seasons 1 through 6 is on Netflix. And so I started watching it and then I just binged it for like the next couple weeks. And then when I couldn't watch season 7 because it wasn't on The Office yet, I got on Hulu, got a free trial, and binged that season. And then I was all caught up. So ever since then, I've been watching The Office on repeat.
So tell me, why do you love The Office so much? What is it about The Office that you relate to? Because I know you're a fan. You have your own custom hashtags and things that you used based
Hashtag
off of,
don't get revenge on me, nerd.
Yeah, that's straight from The Office.
That is straight from The Office.
You've integrated this show into the very core of your life.
Also have some,
why do you relate to the show so much? Why do you enjoy it?
I also have some Funko Pops, The Office. Anyway, I don't know. Honestly, like, I don't think there's any like personal attachment to it. Like, I don't really relate to anybody in that show. You know, I mean, I guess the only person I could maybe relate to, I mean, I even have a hard time trying to find somebody to relate to in that show is maybe Toby. if I had to think about it and be like realistic and be like, Jim, I'm totally Jim. No, I'm not Jim. I'm not. Jim is way too smart for me.
I hadn't even thought about who I would be.
Yeah. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I guess it's just because to me, it's funny. It's very cleverly written. Like every episode is really good. It's kind of like House in that regard. Like I love House. I've seen it several times as well. And it's funny, it's dramatic, it's good, and just like every episode, if like somebody new watches the episode and they're like, I'm on this episode, I'll be like, oh, that's a really good episode. And then they're like, now I'm on this episode. I'm like, oh, that's a really good episode.
It's a great episode.
Yeah, and every episode is just really good. So it's kind of the same with The Office, where like, yeah, I have some episodes I don't like as much as other episodes, such as Fun Run and Survivor Man, but like I can still watch it.
Titles, you know the titles. I call them by like the CPR episode or
I don't know all the titles.
Episode.
That's the same episode.
Is it? Oh, it is.
Stress Relief Part 1 and 2. Anyway, well, like, and then there's the cringy episodes that people hate, like Dinner Party and Scott's Tots, and I'm like, yeah, they were a little cringy, but I thought they were hilarious. Like, there's people. I'm part of an Office, The Office fan page on Facebook, and there's people that are like, I skip it every time. I'm like, why? If you're a fan, just watch it. It's not that bad of an episode.
Well, one thing that I have heard when it comes to complaints for The Office is that a lot of people get very bad secondhand embarrassment from the characters of the show.
That's called
like they're empathetic towards the characters of the show, which really I think that just goes to say how well they produced this television show.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's why some people don't like certain episodes, is because it's just so awkward and so uncomfortable for them to watch because they actually feel the character's discomfort. That was my wife. I tried to get her into The Office and she watched a few seasons. But I think she eventually was just like, it makes me uncomfortable sometimes. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's understandable.
I don't know. I guess nothing film wise makes me uncomfortable. That's why I can watch things like The Human Centipede. Caroline, sorry, I have to say that because she got mad at me. My friends got mad at me for constantly repeating The Human Centipede on my podcast. So now that when she listens to this, I name dropped her. I name dropped that.
Special shout out.
So anyway, so that's why I can watch things like The Human Centipede and like cringy episodes of The Office and just be okay. Like, I don't know, because I guess I'm weird. I don't really feel for, like, I can feel for characters and I can feel bad for them and sorry for them, but not enough to be like, I'm not going to watch this episode anymore, you know? It's just not going to happen. Let's talk about Parks and Recreation, which is another mockumentary style show. It's not as meta as The Office, whereas, we don't know the camera crew. We don't know they're not making it. We don't know if they're making a documentary for any reason. We just know that we get to follow the lives of, these characters in Pawnee, Indiana, and they talk to us through the camera. Yeah.
The Parks and Rec is more of a docu-style show. It's not really...
No, it's still considered mockumentary. It's just not...
It is a mockumentary, but I don't think it's set up as in there's a documentary crew following them, right?
No, it's not. Mm-hmm.
It's just we view their lives through the lens of a documentary style.
Yeah. Okay. And like the thing about Parks and Rec that I like is it's made by created by Mike Schur, and I think Greg Daniels is involved in that too. Which Mike Schur plays Mose on The Office, but he's also a writer on The Office, and so it's going to be good because he's really funny. And the thing I like about Parks and Rec as opposed to The Office is that we're in the Parks and Rec department of Pawnee, Indiana, but we're not just in that department the whole time. We have all of Pawnee to deal with. Does that make sense? So there's a lot of different storylines, different more creative storylines that we can follow and watch. Does that make sense?
The scope is a lot more broad.
Right. Exactly.
We're not characters outside of the Parks and Rec office, community members.
Exactly. And so we go to we have public forums and, they do the canvassing, door to door, and then just other random stuff like I think it was season 7, we actually go to a farmer's market that has been created, and then we, get to follow Leslie to Washington when she starts working for the National Parks Department. And she has to go to Washington sometimes, and then we follow her to England. And
we follow Ron. I know Ron goes to England.
That's so funny. He's so funny.
He finds that brewery.
Well, he finds the Lagavulin Scotch maker factory. Yeah, and like he goes to London, but he doesn't want to. The only reason he goes is because his new wife, wants him to, because they thought it would be fun to go as like a honeymoon. Anyway, it's just funny to watch him interact with people in London. And then on top of that, like he's been forced to take pictures because Diane is at home sick, and he looks at Big Ben. He's like, look, a clock. We don't have that in America. It's just so funny. And then he buys a card, and he tries to give he tries to pay with American money. And then he's like, no, we don't take American currency. He's like, take it. It's the best currency in the world. And he's like, wait, sorry, sir. And he goes, okay, well, he says something like, be upset that your royal overlords are an old woman and a tiny baby. It is so funny. There's things about Parks and Rec that I think are like characters. I think are somewhat better than on The Office, just because, I don't know about characters, but the way their personalities are. So, you have Ron, who's like this hardcore, liberal.
Not liberal.
No, he's not liberal. No, he's a libertarian. Yeah. And so, he's hardcore anti-government and stuff. Whereas, Leslie is pro-government, everything government. And then you have Tom, who's very liberal. Doesn't care about the government. He just wants a job with connections, and it's just like, it's just so a little more vast character-wise than, say, The Office. So what do you think about Parks and Rec? Tell me.
I enjoyed Parks and Rec, not as much as The Office.
I don't. Let me be clear. I don't like Parks and Rec more than The Office, but there are things about Parks and Rec that I do like more than The Office. Go ahead.
Sure. I think I was more engrossed in The Office than Parks and Rec, and I think it's because of how The Office committed to the shtick of being a documentary crew, where the mockumentary style for Parks and Rec was fun, but it still felt it was a comedy show. And I don't feel like it was I don't know, as groundbreaking or as cleverly written as The Office. a lot of
I would
time.
say, as far as cleverly written goes, it would probably be right up there with The Office.
Well, the thing with me is I felt like a lot of the characters in Parks and Rec were caricatures.
Yeah, I would agree
and that was the point. They're a small town and it's making fun of small town life and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But they were kind of caricatures as opposed to characters.
Yeah.
And that took a little bit of it away from me for that. I actually wanted to see characters. They do character stuff. They have arcs, they have growth, but they were a little bit too large. They were too much larger than life. And I appreciated kind of the pared back take of The Office where the characters were
like real people.
Yeah, they were larger than life, but in a believable sense.
Sure.
Whereas I felt Parks and Rec kind of pushed that to an extreme of like, oh, what's the funniest thing a libertarian would say? Oh, what would happen if we put a liberal and a libertarian in an office together? Oh, crazy fun hijinks. And
I would agree.
It was a little contrived. I don't know. I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But it was a little contrived for my taste.
The only reason I even started watching Parks and Rec was because my friends were like they suggested it to me, and I was like, nah, I don't really want to watch it. And then they were like, you need to watch it. Like, it's actually really, really funny. And I was like, okay. And so I started watching it, and I just like fell in love with it, which, I mean, it's one of my favorite. I mean, it's not in my top 5, I don't think, but I definitely have seen it on repeat multiple times for sure.
One of my favorite television shows here recently is What We Do in the Shadows, which is a mockumentary based on a mockumentary movie that came out, I don't know when, but it was sometime, and it was originally created by Taika Waititi, but now it's a television show, which is really funny. It's essentially a documentary crew that follows around real life vampires, and they get in all sorts of crazy hijinks.
Real life in quotes.
Yeah. What's interesting to me, or like what I find weird about my own self, is like where I didn't enjoy Parks and Recs, like over the topness. I really enjoy that aspect to What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, I think that only makes sense though, because we're following vampires and werewolves.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense for us to not really make sense, but like, it's okay that they are over the top about things, especially what's his face? Matt Berry's character.
Nandor the Relentless.
No, Laszlo. Yeah. Laszlo's my favorite, by the way, but go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it was just like, I found that interesting where I wasn't a huge fan of Parks and Rec for their kind of over the top nature that really fit with What We Do in the Shadows. And I think you're right. It's because of the vampires, but they get all sorts of crazy stuff. It's like, what does a trio of vampires do in the middle of the night? And they get all sorts of stuff. They like fight ghosts and witches.
Yeah.
And
ghosts.
Like witches want to milk them.
Oh man. I think, well, it's funny because it was like Taika Waititi was like, what would it be like if vampires lived today? And then that's the show, because they use computers, they use tablets, they use phones and stuff. And then they also do, some of this stuff they grew up with, which was like, spell books and all that. Cause there's that episode where they connect with their past selves being ghosts. Yeah. The ghosts of themselves. And so they had to use a spell book to do that. And they were able to make contact with them. And it was so funny whenever Laszlo's self, all he wanted to do was just get off. Excuse my language, but he just wanted to get off. And then whenever they came in there, it was all over the room. And they're like, what is this? Ghost ectoplasm? It's like, yes, it's ghost ectoplasm. It's like, oh my God. And he is so freaking funny in that show. Like, I love Matt Berry, and he was on the IT crowd as Douglas Renham. I think it was Douglas Renham. He was Renham's son. And so, yeah, he was the boss. And so he was really funny on that show. And he just kind of took that character and made it into this character. And so
it's the voice, like like over the top British, like voice that he does is great.
Well, even in he was in an episode of Community, and he taught what is it called? It's like swindling, but there's another name for it. But he taught that class how to swindle essentially. And then he voiced a dolphin in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, not the first one, but the second one. I think it was Fish Out of Water or Sponge Out of Water.
3D one.
Yeah, but the only part was 3D. There was only 10 minutes of it that was 3D. So, or by 3D we mean like CGI, and so or live action, I guess. And so he played this dolphin, and I was like, I said, well, I think at the time I was like, I know that voice, and I didn't remember his name, but I knew it was Matt Berry. And so his voice just kind of carries, it's just he's got an awesome voice. And then
he does.
Yeah, so my friends got me into What We Do in the Shadows, and I mean, I instantly fell in love with that show because it's it's vampires. It's funny.
I don't know what it is about Waititi's stuff, but things based off his work. I don't know if he's actually a writer for the television show now, or if they're just basing it off of his, and they're just using that as inspiration. But
basing it off of his what? You broke up.
It seems projects that he's attached to just have a lot of intrinsic joy and heart, and an excitement for life almost.
Yeah.
And that comes across in this film. It comes across in this television show in leaps and bounds. It's all these crazy vampires doing stuff, but it's the joy of them doing it is almost what the show is about.
I think I like Guillermo as well. Since you talk about the joys, he's so happy to be Nandor's, what is it called, familiar, and he's been the familiar for 10 years, and he just wants to be a vampire.
Yeah, played by Harvey. I'm gonna butcher his name. Gillian. Harvey Gillian, I believe. He
was in an episode. He was not an episode. He was in a Geico commercial. And he was funny in that too. I don't know. Even a Geico commercial, he can
I haven't
rock.
seen a Geico commercial.
Yeah, it's funny. But yeah, that show kind of is the same way with Parks and Rec, where it doesn't. Well, no, they do interact with the camera crew, because the camera crew.
Yeah, no, they do.
Yeah,
they do. I think in one of the first episodes, they're king vampire. They're overlord. Their sponsor from across the seas comes and just kills one of the camera.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Straight up sucks the life out of the camera dude and falls on the ground.
Yeah,
the camera sideways, and they definitely interact with the camera crew.
That's so funny. I'm glad they do that though, because I think it adds that extra layer to the show. Where it's not just these vampires and werewolves and witches and ghosts. It's also the camera people that are interacting and humans, because they have the neighbors.
Yeah, mockumentaries that involve the camera crew are, I'm not gonna say they're special. They I feel like mockumentaries that utilize the camera crew as characters are great, because it adds another dimension of not only are these kind of crazy characters on camera, it also makes you wonder what kind of person would go and film these people. It adds a whole meta aspect of okay, you're probably a 20-something cinematographer in San Francisco who finds out that vampires exist.
Yeah,
and
you're okay with that.
$350 a night to go run around with them for not 18 hours. You're gonna be paid $350 an hour to run around with them for 8 hours a night.
Yeah,
overnight.
Do you think that the camera people and the crew had to sign a waiver saying that they can't, kind of like a what is it called, like an NDA? Yeah, they're saying that they can't say they know that these people exist, and I think they're in Staten Island.
Probably.
Yeah. I mean, I would think so, because they can't. They don't.
It would ruin the entire. It would ruin the. Of course, but why would they also do that? Because they're literally filming these creatures for a documentary, so people are going to find out anyway.
Well, I mean, but maybe it'll be like us, where it's they think it's fictional,
So they're gonna film it for real and then present it. So not only is it a mockumentary, it's a mockumentary pretending to be a documentary that is then represented as a mockumentary in the universe in which it is being occupied.
Exactly. They're okay, this, we're gonna follow these vampires around. You can't tell anybody that vampires exist. And when we release this, we're going to make everybody think it's fake. These are all actors.
But that's what's great. See, the fact we would not have had that conversation if they had not implemented the camera crew and the camera as part of characters in the show.
Well, to be honest, I never thought about it until just now. So I don't think
that's a whole nother level. Well,
this podcast helps.
The fact that it's in there gives us the opportunity to think about stuff like that. Because if it was just like Parks and Rec, it would still be a funny show, but it would be a funny show. Now, not only is it a funny show, it also makes you think about the universe in which it resides and the greater aspects of the show, which for me is part of the fun.
For sure. Yeah, I totally like, I was sorry. I was thinking about it. How like,
I was just thinking about that.
Well, it's just funny because like without this podcast, without us, even because I've never like my friends watch the show and I've never thought about it. Like, how are they presenting this to the people in that universe?
Dude,
you know what I mean? Like, are these people, are they allowed to say something? Are they allowed? They probably can't. I'm assuming they can't. Like, as far as
we'll find out. Maybe we'll find out in later seasons. If we get 9 seasons of What We Do in the Shadows, maybe we'll actually see some of them on camera. We'll find out what happens.
Maybe just the last season they finally revealed themselves and they're like, yeah, we had to sign a waiver not to say anything. Like, I would love that. Becomes
True Bloods.
I've never seen True Blood, so and I'm okay with that. Let's quickly. Only reason I want to quickly, because I've only seen this show one time, is Modern Family. Have you seen Modern Family?
Not. I've seen clips on YouTube.
Yeah,
it was never something that really interested me.
I really loved it, but I've only seen it once, only because there's 11 seasons, and when I watched it for the first time, it was when it was on TV, so I couldn't get it just before streaming really took off. So I think it wasn't on Netflix or anything. So I had to buy the DVDs. And so I had to wait until, and then eventually I just kind of got tired of it. Not really tired of Modern Family, but tired of buying all the DVDs and stuff. So then
waiting.
Yeah. And then it came on Hulu not too long ago, actually, probably like a year or so ago. And so I just binged it, all 11 seasons. And so like, it was really funny. Of course, it was the same old thing where it's like really funny at the beginning and the end is not so funny, but still kind of funny. And it's kind of the same format as Parks and Rec, where it's like a mockumentary. They do interviews like on the couch and anywhere. They have talking heads, and then, but they don't acknowledge a camera crew or anything like that. So it's kind of the same style as that, but it's really funny. If you don't know what it's about this like big family. So there's the Dunphys, who are,
the what?
The Dunphys, Dunphy.
Oh, that's not what I thought you said.
Yeah, their names.
I thought you called them the Dumpies.
No, the Dunphys. And so it's like a normal traditional family where, and I say normal, it's a traditional family, where it's, husband and wife, 3 kids. And then there's Claire Dunphy's father, who has this new wife who's like 30 years younger than him, from Colombia with her son. So he's, 60 something years old. She's probably not 30 years, she's probably about 20 years younger.
And by mixed family, I mean family units coming from previous relationships, not mixed race. Just to make that clear.
But I mean, it is a mixed race because he's white, she's Colombian.
Yeah, but when I said we'll edit this out. When I said mixed family, I was referring to previous relationships. Blended family. That's what
blended. Yeah, I was gonna say blended's probably the
blended family.
Blended family where Sophia, that's her real name. Gloria had a previous relationship with Javier, and they had a son, Manny, and then they get a divorce. She meets Jay, they get married. Jay's like super old, he's like 60 something going on, he's pushing 70. She's probably like late 30s, early 40s. And then you have Claire's brother, Mitch Dunphy, who is gay and has a relationship with the band, and he's been with him for a very long time. And then in the first episode, they actually adopt a daughter together. So it's kind of like that modern family. It's a modern family. It's like a family you would see nowadays. So it's really funny. A lot of great storylines because there's so many characters that can interact with each other. But of course, I don't like it as much as The Office or Parks and Rec or What We Do in the Shadows. Like if I had to pick, that show is at the very bottom. But I did think it was really funny. Of course, going into later seasons, it was kind of like it was funny. But I was like, I got to finish this because I've quit on this show before. I need to finish this show kind of mentality at that point. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's about as much as I want to talk about Modern Family, unless you have something to say.
No, I've never seen it. I've only seen clips on YouTube. It seems funny enough. But it seemed like one of those shows that was a docu style without actually being... without actually having the camera as a character, which I don't know. There's just something about having that extra layer that intrigues my interest, that I enjoy. And
I get that. I get that. I like both versions, of course, but I get that extra layer and having, essentially extra characters. And so I had
go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was going to move on, but first off,
I was going to move on as well.
Okay.
I want to see what direction you're moving on.
Okay, so we talked about What We Do in the Shadows. That was the next one under Modern Family in my list. Love the show. But I also wanted to talk about like shows that I call them mockumentary style, like you've been calling them, except for the difference between this mock style that I've created in my head that as opposed to yours is there's no interviews, but it looks like a documentary. Does that make sense?
There's a name for that, and I'm trying to recall it.
So the first show that's like this that I want to mention is Arrested Development. Have you seen that show?
No.
Oh my God.
I know of it, but no, I've only ever seen clips.
Oh, Jake, you gotta watch this show.
I know he like loses his hand and like turns blue at one point. And
oh yeah, you're talking about Buster. He does lose his hand. Yeah. And he doesn't turn blue. Tobias turns blue. So anyway, so this show is about a rich family who's the patriarch of the family, George Sr., ends up going to prison because he's essentially being charged of treason, of selling houses and building houses for Saddam Hussein. And so their company is like going under. But, Michael Bluth, played by Jason Bateman, is trying to keep it all afloat while his dad's in jail. And so everybody, of course, is rich and they're all spoiled. So you have all the, the brother, Michael has two brothers and a sister. And Michael is the oldest with his twin sister, Lindsay, who's very selfish, self-centered, claims to be, an activist, but she doesn't really do anything about it unless it, helps her. And then you have Job, played by Will Arnett, who is also a magician, or he calls it an illusionist. He doesn't call them tricks. He calls them illusions. And he's the same way. I mean, like Job and Lindsay are the same people essentially, but they do different things. They're both self-centered and they don't have money, but they end up getting money somehow. And then you have Buster Bluth, who is the youngest, who actually Job is older than Michael Bluth. That's right. It goes Job, Michael, and Lindsay, and then Buster. Buster's the youngest, who still lives with his mom, still loves his mom, can't live without his mom. And so, and he's very childlike. And it's just funny because he's like 30, at least 30, Is
that where the Arrested Development name comes from?
I think Arrested Development comes from every character in that show. Every one of them has some sort of Arrested Development. And even in the fourth season, when it came back on Netflix after 13 years, it was split up into different, the episodes were split up following certain characters. So at the end, instead of saying it's like I don't want to say the theme song, it's more like a theme narration, where there's music behind it, but the narrator talks about the family. And at the end, he always says, it's Arrested Development. Well, in the fourth season, he says, this is Michael's Arrested Development. This is Lindsay's Arrested Development. And so every one of them has some sort of, something going on. I mean, way problem. And so Michael's, go ahead.
I was going to say, I did a bit of research while you were describing that. Mm-hmm. And Wikipedia, incredible source of information.
We love Wikipedia.
Describes what you're talking about as a documentary comedy. So it's comic material that's presented in a documentary style.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't necessarily use the talking head feature of the mockumentaries like it would in The Office or Parks and Rec or whatever, but it has that feel of being a documentary because, you know, every shot is on the shoulder. Like they're carrying cameras around and not putting them on tripods and stuff. And so it's such a funny show. And like I think that these other shows we've been talking about are very cleverly written, but like Arrested Development has a way with words. Like if you ever watch Arrested Development, at least try the first season. Like it has a way with it can take a pun and make it into something completely different, but it means the same. It's very like interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting the way they do it. And I wish I had an example for you off the top of my head, but I don't. But yeah, they have a very good way with words, if that makes sense. So yeah, and then Michael's whole thing, I know we talked about the other. I wanted to really quick talk about Michael's thing is he always wants to be in control, and so he's been wanting to be president of this company, and he was about to be named president, or at least he thought. They ended up naming Lucille, his mom, the president because George Sr. knew he was going to go to jail, and so he thought that he thought his lawyer had told him a long time ago that husband and wife can't be charged for the same thing. So he made Lucille the CEO as opposed to Michael, and so of course that's not true. They could both get charged for it, and so he thought making her CEO would clear her of the charges. And she'd be okay, as opposed to making Michael the CEO, he would get in trouble too. And so It's a very, very good show. And like, that's one show that me and my twin brother, like actually can agree. We both like The Office, but that's another show that we both enjoy. And that doesn't happen very often.
You did a good job. You did a good job selling that. I might have to check that out.
Well, thank you. I try. I wasn't really trying to get you to watch Arrested Development, but if I can get you to watch Arrested Development, then yes, because that I don't know too many people that watch the show, and like it's such a good show. If you can understand the comedy, it's so freaking funny and so good. And like just the way the narration is done by Ron Howard. If you know who Ron Howard is, he's directing, the Grinch, the Da Vinci Code, and all that stuff. If you burp and blow it away, if you burp, I can't smell it.
I'm trying to keep it out of the microphone.
Oh, that's fair.
Like I just burp it in the microphone.
No, that's it's. I mean,
you know what? I'm gonna edit this.
Sorry, I just keep seeing you like blow it away, and I'm like, I can't smell your.
I'm not gonna belch into our listeners' ears.
Okay. Anyway, sorry.
Tickle their inner ear bones.
All right, so we'll edit this. Snap. Okay. All right, and then the next show I wanted to quickly talk about, unless you have anything to say about Arrested Development, which you don't, I'm assuming, because you've never seen it, is actually there's another show I want to talk about too. It's called Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Have you ever seen that show?
Oh, yeah. Is that a documentary style? I've watched that, and that doesn't ever come across to me as a documentary style.
I mean, to me it does, mainly because it has that look to it. I don't, it's not a documentary. It doesn't present itself as a documentary, but it just has that camera holding, quick zooms. It
has that journalistic style.
I mean, yeah. And so that's kind of the feel I get from it. I don't know if it was meant to be like that, but to me, that's what I get is that because it kind of looks like almost like here's the look of a documentary. Or excuse me, a mockumentary style show, not as, let me see. Oh, hang on. Here is the comparison of oh man, I forgot what I was trying to say. Okay, let's edit this. So if you look at it, so when you look at these shows that don't have, like you got a sitcom, right? And it has a specific look. Does that make sense? So shows like How I Met Your Mother and what is another sitcom? I've been watching How I Met Your Mother lately, so that's the only reason why I know that one. How I Met Your Mother, anything from like All in the Family and the Jefferson Friends, yeah. So it has that look without the laugh track and without the tripods. Does that make sense? Kind of.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just the look, that's kind of what I get as like might not have been trying to be a mockumentary or trying to look like a documentary, but that's the vibe I get from it, just because of the way that the show is shot. And so, yeah.
I was going to say, you keep mentioning, do you think that's because, again, they use the camera as a character, not in the fact that they have like a documentary crew, but the fact of like, if characters are having a conversation, the camera is used to sell the character's emotions. It'll do a flash zoom, or it'll pan at the right moment to give the emotional weight.
If you think about it, though, it's kind of looking like it's kind of, to me, it kind of seems like it's maybe first person, like we're actually there. So it, like, if something interesting's happened, we're going to look at it,
That makes sense. I think that's the most accurate description.
Yeah. And so if you're looking at someone talking and then someone behind you starts talking, we're going to whip over
around.
And so, The Office does that, but it's more of a it's trying to be a documentary, but then you got these other shows, more like Arrested Development and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, where we don't have talking heads. We don't have people sitting on couches talking to the camera, which makes it even more real to us. Like they're talking to us, but now we just get to look at it.
You get to inhabit the perspective of the camera.
Exactly. And it's just kind of like it's supposed to be our eyes.
That's cool. I never thought about it that way.
Me neither, until this episode of the podcast.
Dude, we are learning so much right now.
I tell you, we're so many revelations at one time. My head is about to explode. Anyway, so I never thought about it either. Maybe it's supposed to be kind of like that. Maybe I don't know if that's what they were going for.
I've always wondered what a first person perspective TV show would look like. Mm-hmm. So I know there's like Hardcore Henry and first person view films, but those didn't ever really feel like looking through someone's eyes. And now that you talk about it, that is almost the sense of like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, of like you inhibit the camera, or you inhabit the camera. And you are responding.
Those are your eyes
to what's going on. That's cool.
I didn't. Like I said, I've never thought about it until just now. I need to look more into that. That sounds like a paper ready to be written. Like, is it supposed to be
Professor Strange?
Yeah, heck, yeah. I'm a professor now. I should start writing some more scholarly papers. And if anybody who doesn't know what Brooklyn Nine-Nine is about, go ahead, because I'm going to explain Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So if you have something quick to say, you can say.
No, I was going to move on to the next subject.
Okay. So quickly, I'll say this. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, if you haven't seen it, is also a really funny show starring Andy Samberg as Jake Peralta, kind of a slacker detective. And then he's got all these other friends, and I'm not going to go into their names and what they're about, but essentially you get to watch, because there's a lot of them. If you've seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you know that there's just a lot of people that inhabit this police station. But you have like Jake Peralta, and then you have Captain Holt, who are kind of at odds with each other at the beginning and then become friends, blah, 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 blah. So he's essentially a detective that works for the New York City Police Department at the 99th precinct. And so it's just a bunch of like comedic hijinks that detectives get into, and people fall in love and break up, blah, 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 same old stuff. So if you haven't seen it though, it's funny. It's on Hulu, and all the seasons are done. Like it's completely done now. So it's only 6 seasons long if you haven't seen it. So anyway, go ahead, Jake.
Now, Justin, we've talked about a lot of television shows, mockumentaries. In fact, pretty much this whole episode so far has been about mockumentaries on television.
Right.
Which is fair because they're really great. Mm-hmm. But there's a whole other side of media, the film, that people make as well for mockumentaries. And I've noticed, whereas we've talked about the television mockumentaries, they all primarily have been comedies. Mm-hmm. They've all been, not satire. They've all been sitcoms and comedies. Mm-hmm. I've noticed when you get into the film aspect or the film side of mockumentaries, the types of genres that mockumentaries fall into is a lot more broad than television.
When you mention that, the first thing I think of is like horror movies, found footage, which I don't think are meant to be documentaries when they're being shot, but they have that feel, because it's cameras being either on a tripod, because you look at one of the earlier found footage, which is like, well, the Blair Witch Project, I think would be
the Blair Witch Project is a big one.
Yeah,
they're often called like pseudo documentaries because they don't try to. I mean, they don't necessarily try to present themselves.
Pseudo documentaries.
Pseudo.
Yeah.
So they're often called pseudo documentaries because they're not trying necessarily to present themselves as real, but they are definitely trying to present themselves as
real scary. Sorry. Go ahead.
as a representation of real life.
Right.
So it's very much done in a realistic style.
Well, the Blair Witch Project was so real to people that they had sent letters to the main actress's mother, apologizing and for her death and all this stuff. They thought she was really dead, or at least really gone.
The fun thing about that, the reason that people thought that as well is the marketing team behind the Blair Witch Project was incredible, and they created an enormous amount of supplemental material for their marketing scheme. And in fact, speaking of pseudo documentary versus mockumentary, as a promotion for the movie, the Sci-Fi Channel presented a true mockumentary on the teens in that movie. And they actually presented it as a real documentary based off the teens that were going to be in the movie. So not only did they have the movie, they also had a true mockumentary shown on television. And it was I don't know how long it was, but it was it was probably about half an hour. It was an actual documentary presented as a real documentary on television. And they also, for the marketing material, released missing persons and
that's awesome.
Like death with the actors and actresses' faces in preparation for the movie. So they went full out. They went full out on their marketing and really tricked people into thinking that this was a real documentary, at least until the film came out, which even then was still convincing in and of itself.
Right. So when you say the team, do you mean like the characters in the movie? They created in the movie. Okay. Because at first I was thinking you were talking about I thought you were talking about the actors at first, and I figured it out eventually. So that's
they created missing person flyers for the characters in the movie using pictures of the actors and actresses.
But I'm talking about the documentary you said they made. Well, I say documentary, mockumentary. It was about the teenage. That's cool.
They made a mockumentary presented as a real documentary. On the characters in the movie.
That's cool.
As if they were real people actually gone missing and were murdered.
Well, it helps. If people actually watched it, it helps to kind of build that character development. So that whenever something happens, they're like, "Oh no, he was a school athlete or something like that."
He died from this documentary we watched. Oh my god!
So that's kind of one of from what I remember, one of the early representations of this found footage genre in film. Because it came out, I think, in 1999, and I was like 13. I didn't see it when I was 13. I didn't see it till I was
going to say that would F me up.
No, I didn't see it. I was really into horror movies as much as I am now. Then as an adult, though, Paranormal Activity came out. And I remember people thinking that was kind of real. Of course, it wasn't. But I do remember it being kind of scary. I don't really get scared, but it kind of freaked me out. And then there's another movie, and I think we've talked about this movie before. It's called As Above, So Below. Haven't we talked about it? Okay, so it's the same thing with the found footage. And now that movie, I saw in theaters, and it did freak me out because it was so real to me. Like, this could really happen almost, like they go so far down that they're in hell in the catacombs in France, and they see things and blah, 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 blah. So, like, it was insane how...
At some point, that immersion was broke.
I mean, yeah. So it was that's probably one of my favorite horror movies. Besides The Exorcism of Emily Rose, only because that kind of is what got me into those kind of movies, was that movie. Yeah. So ever since Paranormal Activity came out, I've been watching every single one of them ever since. And so I'm totally into that kind of stuff. And then there's, go ahead. Your turn.
Well, I was going to say, but when it comes to films, there's so many more genres. Like horror is a big one. Right. Comedy is still a big one, but they also go into like satire and drama, fictional history, things like that. There seems to be a lot more in the film realm than there is in the television
TV realm. Yeah, I can see that. It's easier to do a project like that because it's a lot low budget, like really low budget. But let me rephrase. It's a lot lower budget than say an actual film that has CGI and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier to make.
That's true, but there's also films such as Sacha Baron Cohen's Bruno or Borat, or Borat's subsequent movie film.
Yeah.
Which he actually used a lot of guerrilla filmmaking. So not only, it is a mockumentary, but he actually uses real documentary techniques and real people to craft a narrative in which they are not necessarily willing or cognizant of.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I like about those movies specifically. Like the second one where he barges into, I think it was, Mike Pence's speech or whatever, and like nobody really knows what's going on. It's because I don't think anybody did know what was going on. They didn't realize that was Sacha Baron Cohen in disguise.
No, until
the movie came out.
A lot of his films are like that.
He's really good at that.
In Bruno, where he plays he's like a gay reporter, I think, who goes on this journey. The climax, no pun intended, of the film was actually filmed in my hometown of Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Was it really?
Did you know that?
No, I've seen Bruno, but I saw Bruno in theaters, and I was like, that movie was so stupid.
The cage match at the end of the film was recorded in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that movie.
And the patrons, all the people who were there, were tricked into coming with a Craigslist ad and flyers that promised, quote, hot girls, $1 beer, and $5 admission.
That's funny. That's awesome.
And about 1,500 people showed up. It was actually pretty crazy. As soon as the climax happened, they actually went and tried to attack him. And the Fort Smith police, they had about 40 police officers actually come and had to protect Cohen and his crew from rioters in their bus. And it lasted like hours. Like there was a standoff for hours.
I'd be pretty mad
outside the Fort Smith Convention Center. It was wild. So that's a fun fact.
That is pretty funny. I didn't know it was filmed in Arkansas, though.
Yeah.
I need to watch it again.
They originally tried it in Texarkana, but the crowd caught on too quickly and they didn't have enough safety precautions. And so they had to run away and regroup like the very next day, essentially in Fort Smith.
Yeah. The only part I really remember from that movie is the part where he has sex with his dead boyfriend. Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
And he's just doing it with like the air, essentially. I remember thinking, this is so dumb. And I left there. But I guess maybe I should give it another shot because Sacha Baron Cohen is very like talented. So it's not like
what he does. Yeah. So anyway, the fact that he uses actual documentary style, he actually uses guerrilla style filmmaking for his works, provides a kind of grounded realism, weirdly, to the stuff that he's doing, because he's going in places with people who are unaware, with events that they're not prepared for, and he's essentially just creating narratives based off of these people's reactions. The stuff that he gets is kind of wild. I remember watching the subsequent movie film, and he has there's a whole arc with two gentlemen that he actually stays with during COVID. That wasn't originally planned. That was because of COVID restrictions, and they had to stay somewhere, and he convinced them. And kind of the fact that, yes, they're ridiculous and have some weird views, but the reason they weren't painted just entirely as villains is because he actually spent that time with them for so long, and was able to realize that they have these views that have been kind of ingrained in them, and they're not inherently bad people. They just have bad education. Essentially, they've been taught poor things, and they're just reacting off that. That wouldn't have happened if COVID didn't occur. That wasn't planned at all. They're going to go an entirely different direction for the film, but COVID happened and they had to adjust. And it's the fact that he used those techniques in that environment. You kind of got an almost heartwarming, section of the film with these two gentlemen.
Probably wasn't even meant to be like that, with Sacha Baron Cohen. Knowing him, it's probably meant to be funny, but yeah, I mean, they end up bonding, right? If I remember correctly. Yeah, it's kind of like the first one where they're in that Winnebago thing with those other guys, and I don't know if that was. I'm sure they didn't know who he was.
I don't know about the first one, but I know for a fact that for the subsequent film, none of that was planned.
I like that you keep calling it the subsequent film.
It is the subsequent film.
I mean, I know that's what it's called. It's just funny that you keep calling it that. Anyway, I watched that movie with some friends, and I thought it wasn't as funny as the first one, but it was still like really good. And he had some really good moments with people who were, because you got to think he's probably going in there telling them, who he is as his character. And they don't realize that it's Sacha Baron Cohen, making a movie.
Yeah, and that's precisely what it is. They have no idea.
And so they sign waivers, but I'm sure there's some language in the waivers that allows them to show it as a movie, as opposed to it being because Borat is a journalist, he's a reporter, and so and then I think the second one he finds out he has a daughter, right? That's his daughter? Yeah. And so it's just it's so good. If you've ever seen like Sacha Baron Cohen, I've seen a lot of his stuff except for The Dictator and Ali G. But he's in another movie called The Chicago 7. I think it's what it's called. You know what I'm talking about?
Nope, I haven't seen it.
But he's more dramatic in that. And so he's like all around Sacha Baron Cohen is just a good actor. I like seeing comedians in serious roles to see how they do. And almost always they do a really good job. Even like,
isn't he also in Sweeney Todd?
Oh yeah. And he's also in Alice Through the Looking Glass.
Yeah.
But I think about it. Oh, yeah, he's in a lot of movies I've seen that I can't remember until you mention it for some reason. It's funny how that works. So Sacha Baron Cohen is just, I like to watch, like I said, comedians in serious roles, and Sacha Baron Cohen's kind of a master at that. Even like Ashton Kutcher in The Butterfly Effect. I thought he did a great job in that. So I don't know, give comedians a chance in dramatic roles if you're one of those people who doesn't like to see comedians in dramatic roles. Does that make sense?
Good work.
So anyway, so unless you have anything to say, I think we could probably wrap it up, huh?
Yeah, I think, just I guess just to end, there's so many different styles of documentary. Obviously, comedies and TV is one, but there's a whole range of film or a whole range of styles when it comes to film as well that we didn't even get into. But I think a takeaway from this, as long as documentaries are being made and documentaries evolve, I think we're going to see new versions and new styles of documentaries as well.
And
don't you?
We could, and we could even, I bet we could even think of what they are and make one ourselves, Like I think I've told you this, but I really want to I'm learning how to needle felt, which is taking wool and making it into shapes. And I really want to make something out of that. And I don't want to say it on the podcast, but I'll tell you when we're done. But I really want to do something creatively, kind of documentary-y with that.
Documentary-ish.
Yeah, that I like my way better, documentary-y. Anyway, but yeah, I think you're right. I think it'll just keep evolving. Like film evolves every single day. Like real quick, there is another movie that's kind of that documentary style. If you've ever seen it, it's called Chronicle.
Yeah, with the teenagers who get superpowers.
Yeah, it's got Dane DeHaan and Michael B. Jordan in it, and then some other guy. I don't remember who it is. I don't care for Dane DeHaan, but he did a pretty good job in this movie. So they essentially get telekinetic powers, and the two of the friends are, essentially good guys. He kills one of them. But spoiler alert. But then Dane DeHaan's character kind of turns out to be kind of evil. So it's a pretty cool movie. It's kind of taking that documentary format and turning it into a superhero movie, essentially. And so it was pretty cool.
Ooh, something that I just thought of, speaking of the evolution of mockumentaries, there is a movie out called Spree with Joe Keery.
Okay.
Famed from Stranger Things. And that is a mockumentary based off of kind of like Twitch live stream environment, how we have the live streaming our lives, vloggers, etc. It's a movie where essentially he puts GoPros all in his car. And he live streams, quote unquote, live streams.
Oh my God.
But he wants to be internet famous, and he decides the best way to do that is to kill all the people that gets in his ride share, because he's like an Uber driver. And so he goes on this homicidal rampage and kills all the people in his car, but it's all told through
cameras,
these mounted GoPros over his car. So it's like a documentary, but it's more like a Twitch live stream or a
Twitch live stream.
Yeah,
Facebook
live stream online, as opposed to mockumentaries. Because when you think about it, in a lot of ways, the vlogging fad stream, the population, the popularization of vlogging is in a way a self-documentary of people's own lives, their own lives.
No, I totally agree.
I think that's a great example of the evolution of mockumentaries, because it's taken something that is very recent with live streaming and has become popular, and then has again changed this mockumentary aspect of how they tell a film through similar aspects.
Yeah. So you mentioning that, and I know we're supposed to wrap it up, but you mentioned that made me think of these movies that have come out in the last, 5-10 years or whatever, where they're using computer screen cameras or computer cameras as cameras. So, you have movies like Unfriended and Searching, and there is an episode of Modern Family where they do that, where it's all like Skype and FaceTime and stuff like that. Very, very innovative, very cool. And if you haven't seen Searching, that is a great movie. Very suspenseful movie with John Cho. Should check it out. Very good movie. Anyway, so speaking of the evolution of these documentary found footage type movies, that's another direction they're taking it in, where they have, like in Searching, the way they were able to capture him, they just, instead of, we don't have, like, I have Macs all over the place, but I don't leave my FaceTime on. Like, I don't even leave it up. But that's how they catch him. Like when he's walking around his room or when he's using his phone, he just leaves FaceTime up. And when you have FaceTime like up, but you're not using it, it still uses your camera. You can still see yourself in the camera, which I thought was pretty creative. Searching is a great movie that kind of uses that whole computer screen, filmmaking type stuff. And so I've actually thought about creating stuff of my own like that, because I just think that is like really cool. And it's kind of easy. You don't have to necessarily go out and rent a bunch of cameras and stuff. You can, and make it look like it was, filmed on an iPhone and stuff. But
which ironically, I think is what a lot of production companies do.
I was going to say, I think Unfriended was like that. Oh, no, Unfriended wasn't like that. But I think Searching was that way, where they used actual cameras and they just created the desktop through like After Effects and stuff. Yeah, and it's like, dude, just use a computer. But anyway, So yeah, that's kind of that other step that it's taking is
the
really
evolution
cool.
of mockumentaries continue.
I know, it's great, and can't wait to see. And this Spree movie sounds really cool. And actually, when is it? Has it released? Oh, it's not. Oh, it came out in 2020.
It was released like a couple years ago.
Yeah, it came out in 2020. Okay. I'll check it out. Oh my God, I'm sorry, I'm getting really excited about this movie. When is it? What is it on? Is it on anything like streaming wise?
I think it's on Hulu.
Oh, sweet. I'm gonna look right now.
Amazon Prime, I think.
I'm gonna look on Hulu. Oh no, I'd have to sign in. I'm not gonna sign in just yet. I'll look later. But that looks work. Yeah, that does sound really cool. I really enjoyed. I like these found footage horror movies and stuff, but I really enjoy like these movies where they try to make it seem like it's something that people are doing all the time, which is using their phones, using FaceTime, using TikTok, using Twitch, and all this stuff. But then they take that, turn it into a movie. It's pretty cool.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it's very cool to see, that you don't necessarily like, it kind of sucks for us filmmakers who want to go out there and, rent cameras and stuff. But now we can, people can make films with their phones because our phone cameras are so good now. Like I got this iPhone 13 Max Pro partly because of the camera. It's like I can make a freaking movie with this. But us filmmakers, we want to do it the right way. But that doesn't mean we can't do it the other way, because trust me, I'm going to make a movie with my phone. I'm just going to do it because I want to, because I want to see how, it'll turn out. So anyway, now we can officially wrap it up, or do you have anything else you want to say?
I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah,
that's a good place.
I thought I miss Zach. I wish he could have been here for this.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll pick it up another day. But he's doing good work.
He is.
Or he did do good work. He still does good work because he's a reporter and he has to deal with a bunch of crap. I think reporters and servers are the two professions that has to deal with a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other episode of the podcast. Anyway, so that's it for our mockumentary shows, TV, film episode. If you liked it or if you didn't like it, please hit us up on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at the Fantastic Mr. Podcast. Tell us what you liked, tell us what you didn't like, and if you have any ideas for future shows, please let us know. We would love to hear from you. Jake especially, he loves hearing from people,
especially
because he has a family, so he doesn't get out much. So just kidding. I don't get out much either, and I have no family. So at least you have that, Jake. Thank you so much for listening, all two of you. We love you, and please hit us. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, have a fantastic day.
Have a fantastic day. Good one, Jake. Good one. All right. See ya. Wouldn't want to be ya.